Hello and welcome to the Northeast Ohio Media Group Candidate Debates. Thanks for joining us. I'm Mara Zurich. Today we're hosting a debate for the Seven Hills City Council up for election November 3rd. In a moment, the candidates will introduce themselves, but first, here are the rules for our debate. We'll start with 1 minute for each candidate to introduce themselves and explain why they're running. Then I'll ask questions, giving each candidate 90 seconds to answer and a minute for any follow-up. At the end, we'll allow 10 minutes for the candidates to ask each other questions, with 60 seconds permitted for the answers. Councilman Trafis, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you, Maura. My name is Councilman Matt Trafis. I am in my second term as Councilman at Large in Seven Hills. I'm a lifelong resident of Seven Hills, 33 years, and I've been very fortunate to have been very involved in our city over the course of my life. Growing up with my father being the former mayor of Seven Hills, I was at his side all the time and learned a tremendous amount about our city over these years. And I'm very grateful that I can now participate in the process as a councilman. A little bit about myself personally. I went to St. Ignatius High School, Capital University in Columbus. I own my own business for the past almost 10 years now. And I'll be running for my third term this November, and I'm very excited to be here. And I thank cleveland.com for the opportunity to share our thoughts with our residents.
All right, Councilwoman Lecznar, would you like to go next?
Thank you. Caryl Lecznar. I've been on council for 10 years now. I'm seeking re-election in November. I'm not as long-winded as Matt. I've lived in Seven Hills for 28 years and plan on spending the rest of my retirement here. I am a provider support specialist at Metro Health Medical Center in the urology department. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Tripi.
Thank you. My name is Joe Tripi. I'm running for council at large for the city of Seven Hills. I grew up in Seven Hills and then moved back here with my family. I have 4 children, one at Normandy High School, one at Hillside, 2 at Green Valley. So, longtime supporter. I've served in the city as a councilman for Ward 2, and I've also been on the Planning Commission. Currently, I head up the operations for, I believe it's now the 9th largest home improvement company in the country, and head up the operations and the legal departments.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Biasiotta, go ahead.
Hi, my name's Anthony Biasiotta. I'm a candidate for Seven Hills Council, Ward 1. Through cleveland.com, this debate allows us the opportunity to bring our message right into the homes of our community. I want to thank the Northeast Ohio Media Group for giving us that opportunity. Further, I'd like to commend my fellow candidates for their courage to step forward in this important process. What I hope to accomplish today, through dialogue, I want to share with you all the following: that I understand your concerns, that I'm qualified for the task at hand, and if elected, how I will conduct myself in carrying out this community service. Thank you.
All right, thank you all. All right, let's kick off the questioning with taxes. Last election, voters rejected a 3-mill property tax increase. Do you support raising taxes? Why or why not? Mr. Tripi, you can go first.
It's important to be able to provide the necessary services and amenities to the city. So, as a general rule, I'm in favor of properly managing the city in a way that is fiscally responsible. I would say raising taxes is a secondary measure that can be taken to continue to provide the service levels that we need. So I'm not going to say I do not support it, but I'd say all other measures have to be handled first, such as looking into what type of budgetary actions can be taken to further improve the city.
All right, thank you. Mr. Biasiotta, would you like to go next?
Sure, thank you. On the matter of taxes, it's important to look at everything as a whole. You know, exhaust, to use Mr. Trippi's word, all other possibilities first. And one of the things you have to look at is how the expenses have been managed to date. And over the last several years, I've seen a number of reductions. The operating budget has been reduced from 10.5 to 8.5. There's only 2 full-time employees at the rec center, so I think expenses have been handled pretty good. I'm a first-time candidate, but before I came here today, these are the things I found out in doing the research. In terms of revenue, You know, there's only a couple different ways to get revenue. And you have to be careful, you know, almost half the city is over the age of 50. So you're going to balance that, you know, many people on fixed incomes, against the ability to attract new businesses. And an raise in income taxes could jeopardize that, speaking at a very high level. So what does that leave us? I think the best opportunity to increase revenue is through an enhanced commercial development, bring in new businesses.
Great. Councilwoman Lecznar, your turn.
Thank you. The levy that was defeated in the last election was what we termed as the police levy, which would have been a levy that would have taken a big burden out of our general fund. Our police right now, their current budget is approximately $1.3 million. The funds that we would have raised in that tax would have helped to subsidy the rest of the general fund and would not have taken as much. That would have given us $1.3 million, approximately $1.3 million back into the general fund that we had for other services. I had the pleasure of serving with Joe's dad, and he was a very big watchdog. He made sure that money was not spent unless it was absolutely necessary, and that's one thing that I plan on doing also, is keeping the budget, keeping us on budget, and if it requires a tax levy, we've also played with the term streets levy, which would be used, the money for that would be used to redo streets. Infrastructure is extremely important, and so that's something we might want to consider down the line.
All right, great. Councilman Trafis?
Thank you. Last year, I was the only member of City Council that voted no on the property tax levy at the ballot box. I do not support a property tax levy at this point in time. This year alone, the budget that was submitted by our mayor and passed by 5 out of 7 council members spent $700,000 more than the revenue we're generating this year. Question I always get is, well, how will you fix that? What is your proposal? And for the past 3 years, I've been proposing that we restructure our income tax formula by raising our current income tax rate from 2% to 2.5%, but also adjusting our credit that we give residents from 1.1 to 1.6. And according to the Regional Income Tax Agency, that would generate roughly $600,000, which would get us close to covering that gap. And the great thing about this plan is that it does not affect people that are retired, it does not affect Social Security or pensions or anything like that. And also interesting is, if you live in Seven Hills but work in most any other community, you'd receive a slight decrease on the income tax you pay. To me, this is a no-brainer, and I think that if a new council is elected this term, next year we can implement this and actually put this on the ballot so residents can decide what they want.
Great. Now, going along with that, now you said, you know, considering your income tax right now is at 2%, so you said maybe raise it to 2.5%. Any concern that would drive away business and, you know, they would go to neighboring independents like Longbow possibly did? So any concern with that at all?
I don't have any concern, because when a company left our city, it's being replaced by another company right now. And there's been articles about this plan, and it doesn't seem to have affected this big company that's coming in.
Right, but the rate's still at 2%?
It's still at 2%, but the proposal has been out there for about 3 years.
Right.
And it hasn't affected this company from coming in.
All right, Councilwoman Lecznar, any follow-up for you?
Actually, yes, I think that would hamper any new businesses coming in when they can get independence, which is same proximity to everything that we are proximity to, and they'd have to pay 0.5% more tax. It might not affect Matt as much, but it does affect other businesses that we're looking to bring into the city. And right now, we're doing very well with the tax base that we have.
All right, thank you. Mr. Biasiotta, any follow-up for you?
Well, I bow to Matt's experience to a degree on council, and I'm a new candidate for the ward, not at large like my fellow panelists. But at a high level, I've always been concerned about a raise in income tax jeopardizing the ability to bring in new business. The ability to bring in new business when we're sitting next to independents who's open for business, you know, leaves us with only the 2 choices of a property tax or an income tax. So before I agree with them that we need to raise revenue to protect our services. Seven Hills is the third safest small town in Ohio. We also have excellent fire services that my family's been the recipient of, and they need to be protected at all costs. So if revenue needs to be raised, my first approach is through attracting new businesses, and that's my answer.
Great. Mr. Tripi, any follow-up for you?
Yes. In our county and our state, I think it's very competitive to generate, to bring businesses in. I think the proposal, I have my reservations about raising the taxes, the property taxes on the community, because I think that it's important that we try to maintain lower taxes if at all possible. But I think the idea of increasing our income tax will have an adverse effect in bringing in new business. And by adversely affecting that ability, which Seven Hills, I do not necessarily feel we are in a competitive advantage. So we have to go in there and be able to present ourselves in a manner that's we have to be able to upsell ourselves and have certain things that we can go. Increasing our income tax, I think, is probably against our better interest at this time.
Great, thank you, Al. Like many suburbs, Seven Hills is facing some financial troubles. Mayor Richard Delaquila said Seven Hills will have to make some very difficult financial decisions in the upcoming future. So what cuts do you think the city needs to make? Councilman Trafis, you can go first.
Thank you. I think there are a number of things that Seven Hills can do to reduce our expenses. The first thing that I would like to see happen if we have a new council is to make our building department part-time. Currently we have a full-time building commissioner along with 2 full-time clerks, and our building commissioner is making approximately $85,000 plus benefits. And Seven Hills is about 95% developed. Most of the responsibilities of this department are for permits for home improvements and things of that nature. That's one item that we can reduce. I also think that we can make reductions in our recreation center. We have, like it was mentioned, we have 2 full-time employees. I do think that we can make an assistant recreation director part-time. Now, one thing that I think would be very important is, as much as I appreciate having a coordinator for activities and parties, I don't think that job necessarily is the best thing for our city right now. I would rather see us have a position of economic development director where they can work day in and day out on attracting new business and other grant opportunities to the city that would not only pay for that position, but also generate more money to help us long term.
All right, thank you. Mr. Biasiotta, would you like to go next?
In preparation to become a candidate for Council in Ward 1, I requested and received the last 4 years' operating budget from the Seven Hills. My degree is in finance, and I have 25 years professional experience running big projects that have to be done on time and on budget. So immediately, one of the things that I thought I can contribute is going over the numbers. And I did not see, from an expense standpoint, where we are today, at least at the end of 2014, any big bogey. As I walked the ward, which I'm just finished the ward and I'll be starting my second lap of my ward, one of the questions that did come up was the building department. They said, hey, we got a huge building department, blah, blah, blah. So I didn't have the answer. So the one thing I will do when elected is I will get the answer, and I asked the City Hall, I'd like some data on what we have. And they said we have 3 full-time people in the building department. And then I asked other surrounding suburbs, Independence for 1, which is approximately 7,000 residents versus Seven Hills, approximately 11,000 residents. They have 3 full-time building inspectors as well. So we got a city that's almost 50% larger and the same number of people. I didn't see a big gap there. So the expenses, protecting our services as they are today, I don't have a proposal on how to cut them, because maintaining services to the city is one of the things that makes it a good place to live.
Great. Mr. Tripi?
Thank you. My experience, I've had to go out there and, in the private sector, look at what expenses could be cut. And there's always expenses that can be cut. And you have to sometimes be creative and think things through. I've had a lot of experience doing that in the business realm that I've worked, and I've had some experience working with the city in the past. I think that all those options must be explored first. But I can't necessarily provide the necessary input until I'm actually in council to look at it. I think that's really the only way to make those determinations. I applaud Councilman Trafis for throwing out some ideas, because I think those are ideas, and every option has to be explored. You can't go in there and say that's untouchable. Everything has to be looked at, explored, and determined. And we want to maintain certain service levels, but when cuts have to be made, we have to be creative.
All right, Councilwoman Lecznar, you're up.
Over the past 10 years being on council, I've seen a full, robust city hall go down to bare bones. We do have 3 people in the building department. However, based on the cities around us, we are actually a lot lighter than any of them are. We have made a lot of cuts at the rec center, which have brought expenses way down, and they are not taking as much out of our general fund as they used to, which is a big savings, and thanks to Jen Berger, who came in and just really cut everything. We will not cut any services such as police department or fire department. Those are too vital to the citizens, and I will not even consider doing that. Service department has gone from, I'm not positive on the number, but I want to say like 23 people, down to 17. And he's doing a lot of that with part-time work also. It's one of the things that we're working at a very, very good pace with as little people as we have already. If we get into the point where we really need to cut, we'll have to look back and try to resharpen our pencils and go back over everything again. But right now we are so low on everything that it would be difficult to cut anything more.
Thank you. Mr. Biasiotta, any follow-up for you?
No follow-up. I do agree with Caryl. The latest numbers I was able to find, and remember I'm only a citizen, was that the service department was down 10 employees over the last recent years, and they're still delivering a pretty good level of service. So if any of the service people are watching, I commend you on your efforts.
Great. Councilman Trafis, any follow-up for you?
I just want to mention that within the past 6 months or so, 4 full-time service department employees were hired to replace people that left for whatever reason. I'd also like to, I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Tripi, anything for you?
Yes, I mean, I think a matter of being creative, sometimes you have to go out there and look at options that are outside the box. Now, there are things such as working with our neighboring communities to see what type of options we can work on with them to try and reduce some of our expenses and while trying to maintain a certain level of service. These are things that we have to explore and see what we can do and what we might be able to consider.
All right. Councilwoman Lecznar, you're up.
I have nothing else to add. Thank you.
Great, thank you. In addition to a tight budget and the failure to pass a tax increase, Seven Hills lost one of its largest employers, Longbow Research, to neighboring Independence. What can Seven Hills do to remain competitive and draw in businesses to the predominantly residential city? And then, Councilwoman Lecznar, why don't you go first?
Actually, we already have replaced Longbow with actually someone that's bigger and brings in more revenue. We've been filling a lot of the buildings on Rockside, which are our mainstay of any kind of office space. We did offer an incentive to the building that houses these people to help get them in with tenants. We offer them a low-cost loan. We do everything we possibly can. We did have a study that we had done to see what else we could do on Rockside. And we're hoping for the very near future to hear something will be going in there.
Mr. Tripi, would you like to go next?
Sure. I think probably going off of what Caryl has said, we have limited resources in the city, primarily a residential city. We have to utilize those resources to the best of our ability. And again, it's a matter of being creative, thinking outside the box, and being willing to get those resources used in the most timely manner possible. So we have to, on Rockside Road, there are a limited number of consolidated locations that are available to the for bigger development. We have to look at those and work with developers to try and get those areas built up. And hopefully we can do that sooner than later and bring in more revenue to the city.
Great. Councilman Trafis?
Thank you. Certainly bringing new business into the city is important, and there are some ideas on how we might be able to proceed with doing such a thing. But the problem is right now it's just an idea. There's no plans for anything new. So while we're working on the future plans, we need to address what we currently have. And our primary revenue source occurs on Lombardo Center Drive, where there's a number of buildings. One thing that I've heard from people that work in that area and business owners is one of the problems they have attracting people is the street itself is in disrepair. And it's a big deterrent to new businesses moving in because it doesn't look presentable, and it's something we really could fix quickly and at not a huge cost. So I'd like to spend some money at some point when it's available on fixing Lombardo Center Drive. And finally, to bring in more business, I'd like to go back to what I mentioned previously and get an economic development director. I think a professional in that position could pay off in dividends for Seven Hills.
Mr. Biasiotta, you're up.
Cool. Thank you. Well, the first thing we need to do is, like Matt said, is protect what we have today. And it's important before we start going exploring that we realize, per the data that I was able to get through public records, that it's $1 more per square foot to do business in Seven Hills today than it is in Independence. So, we can't do anything to complicate that going forward, in my opinion. But I'm open for any ideas. The one thing when you're a new person coming in, I'm not married to any of the policies of the past. And new decisions will be based on facts only, what's best for my ward and best for the city as a whole. So if people come up with an idea how to attract and keep business, I'm completely open to it regardless of where the idea is coming from. There's limited commercial development opportunity in Seven Hills today. The big opportunity that's left is the Rockside Road corridor. And I think one of the best opportunities for us is to partner with Independence. It's part of like the regionalization. It's kind of the buzzword throughout the county right now. We have an opportunity to partner with a neighboring city that's experts at doing this, that we share Lombardo Center with. One side of the road is ours, and then across the median's there. So look to them, look to their expertise, and let's build this out, and maybe we can share some of the infrastructure costs moving forward.
Great, thank you. Mr. Tripi, would you like to follow up on anything?
Yes, I think the points made are valid ones in the sense that if you look at Euclid Avenue, I feel like the street has changed significantly since I went to law school here, and walked up and down that street often. And it started with redoing the street. So I think there is a valid point in the sense that you have to do it. But I also like the idea of trying to share in the expense of that with other communities that may benefit from it. So if Independence will benefit from the repairs to Lombardo, then we should take a look at working with them to do so.
Great. Councilman Trafis, any follow-up for you?
Just one little detail, just so you're not confused in the future. Lombardo Center is all in Seven Hills. It's not in Independence.
All right.
So,
Well, thank you.
no problem.
There's a Lombardo Center, the buildings are all in Seven Hills. Then there's our street and a median and then Independence. Am I right?
The street and the median that's in between the street, the whole street is Seven
It's all
Hills.
ours.
Just so you know, no big deal.
Thank you.
All right.
Sure.
Any follow-up for you?
I have no follow-up. I like all the input I heard from all three
Great.
candidates.
Councilman, anything
No,
for you?
thank you.
Great. Councilman Trafis, this question's for you. You were arrested last week after an anonymous complaint was filed accusing you of dereliction of duty and confidential nature of information obtained for disclosing income tax information about Longbow Research, which moved to Independence since then. What do you think about the accusations, and do you regret sharing that information publicly?
All I can say is that it's always obvious when it's an election year in Seven Hills, because someone seems to always find some way to find a way to file an anonymous charge or complaint, and hopefully their thought is to hopefully derail the clean campaign process. This election year certainly is no different, and this time, as usual, I'm the target. So I guess I probably shouldn't have announced late last year that I was considering running for mayor, but it is what it is. The charges are absolutely ludicrous, and they're simply a reaction, in my opinion, to the city dropping the ball on losing one of our largest, if not largest, employers. At this point in time, that's all I'm going to say on this, but I certainly will be participating in any process that is coming up, and I look forward to that.
Great,
so
thank
the truth can come out on what's happening.
Thank you for answering. All right, for the rest of the candidates, Mayor Delaquila said publicly that he did not lodge the complaints, has no idea where they stem from. What do you guys think of the complaints, and do you think they detract from doing business within the city? And then Councilwoman Lecznar, would you like to go first?
Well, unfortunately, I'm not, because I am still sitting on council and it's a pending litigation, I'm not allowed to comment on it. It just seems sad that we always have to have, Seven Hills is always burdened with this, oh, Seven Hills mentality, because we've always got someone that's in the news for some reason or another that's not always painting a very good picture. It's unfortunate that we have that kind of politics. I don't go for that kind of stuff. I'm not into mudslinging, and it's bad for the city.
All right, Mr. Biasiotta, any thoughts from you?
Well, specific to Matt's, I have no comment. I think the facts will play themselves out in the courts or however, and that's the proper way to handle that. So I have no personal comment on that. But it is an issue, you talk about the issues detracting from doing business. I believe the civility of Seven Hills politics is a detraction to doing business in Seven Hills. Just in general, not specific to any current event. But the way we appear in the media is a factor attracting new business. Personal attacks, immature internet postings, frivolous lawsuits, they damage the city for all residents, regardless of political affiliation. So to no end, when I walk the ward, before Deer, before streets, before finances, everyone told me, not the 10 people that are loudest, the over 300 people that are supporting my campaign today said how we treat each other is the #1 thing, and the fighting has to end. And I'm trying to do things different with my campaign, so then we'll put an end to that. When I'm on the internet, I don't hide behind a newspaper or something like that. My name's tied to everything I post under my campaign page, and I try to keep it positive and factual. And if we all do our part there, we're going to turn this around one thing at a time. And it's actually one of my favorite quotes by Teddy Roosevelt: complaining about a problem without posing a solution is called whining. So I want to hear from everybody. Tell me what you think the problem is and how to solve it, and I'd be happy to work with you no matter who you are.
Thank you. Mr. Tripi?
To Matt's situation, I don't like to see that to anybody that's doing public service. This is not a job that pays a lot of money. You don't do it for the glory. You don't do it for the wage. I think you do it for the public service. So I don't like to see it happen to anybody. I don't care where they sit on what side of the aisle or anything like that. So I just don't like it. I've been in Matt's shoes before, so I can appreciate where that's coming from. When it comes to what Mr. Biasiotta said, I would say I agree wholeheartedly that we have to work together. We have to be a unit that is viewed as a team trying to come together. Now, I'm not going to be living in the clouds, and there's going to be debates, there's going to be disagreements, but we have to try and work together and keep it civil and keep it above board. So that's where I stand on that matter.
Great, thank you, candidates. Any follow-up? Councilman Trafis, any follow-up for you?
Thank you. I just want to mention one quick thing regarding the complaint that was filed. It stems from me obtaining and releasing information that was already a public record that I received from the City of Independence. So, knowing that, I think everybody knows where this will go.
All right, Councilwoman, anything for you?
No, thank you.
Mr. Tripi?
No further comments.
Mr. Biasiotta?
Nope, we're good.
All right, great.
Thank you.
So the next question. The John Glenn Elementary School has sparked a lot of controversy in the community. Residents rejected rezoning the property for assisted living facility, and some are still unhappy with the current plan to build 22 houses on the land. What proposal did you support, and is the plan to build 22 houses the right decision for the city? Councilwoman Lecznar, would you like to go first?
I did support the elderly center. I think it got a bad rap. It was not, it was portrayed initially as a bad thing, and then it blew up from there. As a result, anything that was put out there that was actually truthful and was telling people actually what it was, and that it was not going to be an emergency room coming in and out all the time, the people's minds were clouded, and they just decided against it, and they came out against it. In regards to the 22 houses, that was a plan that was devised with the builder, or with the owner of the property, and with the residents in that area. They agreed to that. I didn't think the 22 houses was going to fit in that property, and it's going to be a wait and see what happens and what they look like. Some people don't like a lot of land, and they are just double income people that have no kids, and they're happy with just a house with as little lawn as they possibly can, and those houses will be perfect for them. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be a wait and see. It's not going to bring in the revenue that we had hoped, but we'll have to wait and see.
Great, thank you. Mr. Biasiotta, would you like to go next?
Well, I was not involved in politics in any way, shape, or form when this was an issue, so I really did not have a public stance one way or the other on the assisted living home that was to go there. However, what I can share with you all is, of course, now with the benefit of hindsight a little bit, how I would attack a similar problem, or even specifically how I would have handled that. I think it played itself out the way democracy should. If I been on council, I would have voted like everyone else to put it on the ballots. The people can speak. But as a councilman, potentially, for Ward 1, I'm real good with listing the people. You know, the 2 ears, 1 mouth. I would have canvassed the neighborhood, paying particular attention to the people that would be most affected, the people that abut the property to be. But I'd also balance that, because it's for the greater good of the whole community, with researching. How much income tax would this have brought to the city? Kind of the problem with everything that we have, the streets, cutting expenses, keeping up service levels, the road is revenue. So I take very close attention to what the revenue projections is and then balance. In this particular case, it did not fit the neighborhood. And being the voice of those citizens, I could not have supported an assisted living as a councilman at that time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome.
Councilman Trafis, any thoughts for you?
Yes. This has been a hot button issue in Seven Hills for a while. And when the property owners, Tom Simich and Bill Mason, approached the city about the assisted living facility, I was a little leery about it. I heard a lot of concerns, especially about how it wasn't properly communicated to the residents in the neighborhood. But I thought it would have generated more revenue than the current proposal. Now, as far as the 22 houses that are going to be built soon, I was one of 2 council members who voted against anything that came in front of us regarding this development. I think there are many unanswered questions, such as if the existing infrastructure, the sewers, can handle a new street. This project is eliminating a parking lot for the kids' baseball diamond, which now is turning out that we'll probably lose the baseball diamond as well. I had concerns about the detention basins, whether they'll be above ground or below ground. And there are too many unanswered things, and I wasn't comfortable supporting this current proposal. And I'm proud that I've spoken up the way I have, and I'll continue to do so.
Great, thank you. Mr. Tripi?
Well, I happen to live on John Glenn Drive, so it's this is it's a project that's happening right in my front yard, not in my backyard. So it impacts those that have the backyards more than me. I can acknowledge that. What I'll say is there is no such thing as a perfect plan. So it does not exist. So this is the one thing I can say is my perspective changed dramatically when one evening I was driving by and I saw friends or former friends of my eldest child running around on the roof of John Glenn, and I'm saying to myself, okay, I don't want to have an abandoned building in my front yard. So I think putting things on the ballot before the people is the right thing to do. I think having this, a development there is better than having a building that's vacant. I think there are concerns. There's always going to be concerns, and we have to head those things off at the pass as they come forward and try to be ahead of the issues. I think the big thing that the city has to do now is work on what are we going to do with the park to make that truly a benefit to the community.
It's actually one of my questions, but any follow-up for Mr. Biasiotta? Now, you are, running to be the councilman of that ward. And the previous councilman, who's no longer on council now, a lot of residents said that he didn't reach out to them, didn't email them as much as they thought he should, didn't send out flyers. Would you have done anything different? Would you have, went door to door, called them, talked to them, called meetings?
I think I touched upon that in my response, but I'll illuminate a little more. Absolutely. It's one of the things. He may have been a little shy. Whether he communicated with that neighborhood or not, I live on Rockside Road. I would not have been part of that. I did not get an email on it. The one thing I would have done differently is I'm out there. I've got 4 streets left, and I will have completed walking my ward. And that's a big difference between my opponent and I. I've not found one house yet where they said they've met my opponent so that they can talk different about. So one of the things, you talk about communication. Yes, I would have got out there, I would have canvassed a greater ward, but gave real good attention to the people that actually abutted it, because theirs are the lives and homes that would have been most impacted. And I'm also, a little bit tech savvy in terms of things getting messaged out, Facebook, email. It's even robocalls are like 3 cents. So, I could have canvassed the whole road with a robotic call and called a meeting and get out and talk to people. That's how I would have handled it.
Great, thank you. Mr. Tripi, any follow-up for you?
Couple of comments that I'll say. Again, because the question that you were asking is, how would I have communicated it differently,
or any thoughts on the issue in general on John Glenn?
I mean, what I'll say is communication is key. Part of it, again, I'm a realist, and I think using the tech things are beneficial. But as pointed out earlier, the majority of our residents are over the age of 50. I think sometimes you got to knock on the doors, especially around the communities that are most impacted. Talk to those residents, get what they have to say, let them know what's going on. I think that's an important thing to try and do. I think, but I also can appreciate the fact that sometimes we all have, this is a part-time job. We all have I've got 4 kids and a full-time job and a family and a wife and all those things that take a lot of time. So I can appreciate the fact that that was there. The other comment I wanted to make is, even if I want to commend Caryl for going and stating exactly what her stance was and why it was, even though it may not have been the most popular one. I think that's commendable and something that should be noted.
Thank you. Thank you. Councilwoman, any thoughts for you?
Just one last thing, and I know everyone can agree, change is not easy. No one likes to see change. No one likes to accept change. And I take effect to the fact that people over 50 are not tax savvy. I'm 54. But that's one thing that people are not into, and they're not into change. And they are long-time residents. That's one of our older wards. And it's not easy to see change. And that was one of the things that would have been happening there. And I mean, I know that a lot of people were heartbroken. Matt, Joe, I'm sure were heartbroken seeing the school be torn down. But it was a very dilapidated school. It had a lot of bad things in it, and it just needed to be worked down.
All right, Councilman, anything for you?
Communication certainly was a big issue. It goes without saying the city needs to be more proactive, and I think there are measures that we can take to make sure that happens in the future.
Great, thank you. So continuing on with the John Glenn issue, many residents are concerned about John Glenn Park.
This is going to be your last question before you head into the 10-minute segment.
All right, let's skip this then and go on to the last one. All right, so last summer, the Deer Committee recommended bow hunting to help curb the deer overpopulation. Residents complain about the deer constantly, want it almost every meeting. It's obviously a big issue in this city. Would you support bow hunting or culling in the city? Why or why not? And Councilwoman, I'll let you start off since you headed the committee.
That's right, I headed the committee. We had multiple heated meetings. In the bottom line was the committee, with the exception of one person, had agreed that our options had been extinguished. I had people come in from various organizations, the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, Petiti Gardens, to try to give us other ways that the deer plants that the deer did not like. I found out after I planted all the samples that she gave us that they did indeed like 5 out of the 7. People are very upset. I've gotten emails and calls on my phone. People are upset. They've paid $500 to have their whole entire yard landscaped, to wake up in the morning and find half of it's been eaten. We're a beautiful city, and we need to keep it a beautiful city. I did support the bow hunting. I know that's not a popular decision amongst the PETA people. In my opinion, it would have been, the way I had it written, the ordinance written up, it would have been a very safe proposal. I do want to say that we do have something coming down the pike, working with the ODNR and other surrounding cities, and if elected, I really would like to get that passed.
Great, thank you. Mr. Biasiotta, any thoughts on the deer?
Sure, thank you. I do believe it's a regional issue, not just Seven Hills. We need to work with our surrounding committees. When people approach me with this issue at the doors, I have a little phrase. The deer don't necessarily live in Seven Hills. They live everywhere. And if we don't act in concert with our neighbors, it's going to limit the impact of our measures. So other things that I've been learning up on is also, also working with the ODNR, and the issuance of urban nuisance permits. So these are the things that I'd continue to follow up on as councilman.
Thank you. Mr. Tripi, any thoughts?
Yes, thank you. First, I'll make one comment going back. I wholeheartily believe that there's plenty of people that are far more tech savvy than myself that are over the age of 50. So I will clarify my comment.
Thank you.
The one thing I will say regarding the deer is that we clearly have a problem. There's a lot of deer. So I mean, I don't think we can say there is not a problem. But I don't think I can be someone, knowing that our community is 95% completed, utilized, I would say it would be difficult to go out there and have to do the bow hunting within our community. Working with our neighbors, working with the communities, working with the metro parks and the national parks. I mean, we have to go out there and utilize those resources. Again, there's more than one way to skin a cat. I can appreciate people, when I tell people that I don't support the idea of doing hunting in the city, I get some unhappy looks, but on the same token, I just don't want to trade one semi-dangerous situation for another. And I think that's my opinion on that at this time.
Great. Councilman Trafis?
Thank you. I think there are a lot of issues regarding the deer and possibly bow hunting. In our small little city, I just see too many safety concerns, and we just don't have enough land to do it, in my opinion. And another problem, and correct me if I'm wrong, Caryl or anybody else, I think that birth control is illegal in the state of Ohio.
Yes, it is. Mm-hmm.
But the good news is...
And it's very expensive.
And it's very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And what we were told recently is that there is a pilot program going on, I believe in the Cincinnati area, where they are allowing deer to be, I think, darted with hormones that stops the process. And what I've heard is that if that's successful, it may be expanded into the rest of the state. So if that's an option, I think that City Council as a whole should lobby the state of Ohio or whoever's involved in making that decision to do that.
Great, thank you. All right, any follow-up? Mr. Biasiotta, anything for you?
No follow-up on the deer, thank you.
Great. Councilman Trafis?
Nothing, thank you.
Councilwoman?
The only thing in the deer with the darting is like the birth control. It's extremely hard to keep control of who's been darted, who hasn't.
Sure.
And that's why the birth control was illegal, because they said we can't follow the females around and make sure that they eat their birth control. It's like a girl who you don't want to get pregnant. And then you have to make sure you don't dart the boys, because that's not going to help. And you won't really be able to tell a lot of times until you get really close, and I don't think I want to do that. So
Thank you.
But I mean, if it's something that does work, I would be more than happy to consider it.
Great.
But I really, like I said, we have something coming down the pike, working with the surrounding communities, and I'd really like to get reelected so we can get that passed through, because that's my passion.
Great. Mr. Tripi, anything for you?
I believe that this is not a Seven Hills issue, this is a regional issue. That's one thing that has to be recognized and understood. This is, if you sit there and took out all the deer in Seven Hills, more deer will come in. So we have to figure out a way to work with our region in order to get this addressed, and that's certainly a big thing, and I'm happy to hear that things are in the pipeline.
All right, candidates. Well, that was not all the questions that I had for you, but we're running out of time. So right now, you guys get 10 minutes to ask each other questions. Councilman Trafis, why don't you start off?
My biggest concern in Seven Hills right now is the financial situation that we're dealing with. Spending, in my opinion, needs to be curbed, and of course we need to bring in more revenues. Other than a property tax or reducing expenses, what other ideas could you have to help us balance our budget that's spending $700,000 more than the revenue we're generating?
Mr. Tripi, why don't you go ahead and answer
Sure.
the question?
I think first things first, I think the other than is a difficult way to go, because I think that you have to start, first thing you have to do is look at how you're spending the money. That's what has to be looked at first before you can go out there and make a determination asking others to give more. And once those means have been exhausted, then you can go in there and start making determinations on how to be creative. I think that there are opportunities out there, and I think that we've taken advantage of some of those opportunities, such as getting streets and sewers worked on through grant programs and things of that nature. That's an important component that we have to continue to look at, because there's money out there, and sometimes it's just a matter of asking, or asking the right way. And we have to put some effort to it. And to Matt, as much as I want to make a look at how we're going to save money through the city, maybe things like an economic development director is not a bad idea,
Right,
where they can go
sorry
there.
to cut you off.
So.
Councilman, go ahead.
We've had multiple discussions on this, Matt. I don't support an income tax. The main way that we need to get more money is to bring more businesses on Rockside. That's our only option at this point. If those options are exhausted, and we really have found out that they're never going to ever build anything on that property, then we have to turn around and look at things again.
Okay.
Making cuts again is going to be difficult, because, as I had said before, we're on bare bones, and we're on bare bones.
I respectfully disagree.
We've got a part-time finance director, a part-time deputy finance director. Those are positions that should be full-time, and instead we've got 2 part-time people doing that job. We don't have an engineering firm anymore, because we had tried to share engineering services with Broadview Heights and our other person, and it failed. But we do need to bring revenue. I definitely don't doubt that.
All right, Councilman, thank you. All right, Mr. Biasiotta, any thoughts for you?
Yes, I'd like to use this time as a kind of a closing statement, but I'll be open to answering any questions the fellow panelists have after. Once again, I'd like to thank the Northeast Ohio Media Group for hosting. And originally it was going to be in with the ward candidates, so I get the extra special say thank you to you 3 for your service. All 3 of you have been or are currently council people, and I thank you for your service. At this time, I'd like to thank the residents of Ward 1. Walking the ward, I've been so warmly received at the doors, and in many cases they offer words of support or assigned location. Your support, along with the support of my family and friends, have truly inspired me, and I couldn't get to this point without you. I look forward to meeting even more people as I walk the ward the second time. In conclusion, I hope through this debate that you have found me a sincere candidate that understands your concerns, is qualified for the task at hand, and will represent the ward in the manner you desire.
All right, thank you. Did you want to answer the councilman's question?
What was his question? Can you repeat your question? If we want to talk about the finances, sure. Once again, it'd be nice to hear my opponent's opinion on this, but she chose not to attend. One of the big buzzwords I hear around town is the $700,000 operating budget in 2015. And feel free to any you experienced council people to correct me. But the city doesn't exist in a vacuum in 1 year. You know, the city's an ongoing entity, God willing. And when I grabbed the 4 years of operating budgets, before I decided to run, what I'd seen is money was set aside for a bond retirement that was a balloon payment was due this year. Money was set aside each of the previous 4 years, maybe 3, to make this payment. So when you look at 4 years in totality, you know, this was a plan for an expense, and the bond retirement fund over these years was up over 400%. So in terms of managing the finances, while down the road we're up against some significant challenges, I don't think it's nearly as dire as what's portrayed in the media. And I also believe the expenses are already to the bone. So we got to look to the grant money.
Mr. Tripi, any questions, thoughts for you?
I think one of the things that, you know, I would agree that the finances is the primary concern that I have. But I also think, and it was touched upon earlier, is the idea of how we as a community can work together to ensure that we're doing all that's necessary as a unit to try and do the things that are in the best interest of the city. The question I would ask is, how do each of the other candidates that are up here plan to work with the other members of the council and the administration going forward?
Councilman Lecznar, any thoughts for you?
Am I answering his question or thoughts?
You could do both. Answer the question
Okay.
first, and then.
First, I do want to make a comment. Mike Barth had asked me to make his apologies. He was in the hospital very recently, and he did come home today, but he's very weak and did not think that it was a very good idea that he venture out of the house. I mean, I think people can see how I am when I'm on council. I ask the appropriate questions where necessary. I'm not a backbiter. I don't fight with people. I don't think that's the way to get things accomplished. Like my dad always used to say, you can get more bees with honey than you can with vinegar. You have to be able to work together for one goal. And if you're going to infight and backbite, nothing will get done. I think as a council, we've done the best we could. The first couple of years I was on council, we had gotten so many pieces of literature or legislation passed that the law director couldn't even keep up with us. I think we had a couple of record years there the first couple of years I was on. For me, the finances are important. The $700,000 is a number that Matt keeps throwing out, and he will keep throwing out, I'm sure, as long as he can. But as Tony said, it was a balloon payment that needed to be done.
Councilman, I'm sorry to cut you off.
Okay.
Councilman Trafis.
I think everybody that is elected in Seven Hills truly means well, and we all want to see our city move forward. We're all in this for the right reasons. The difference is that we have different ways of getting there. And, you know, in my opinion, it's very obvious that the status quo in Seven Hills does not work. For the past 10 decades, the majority of the years over the past 10 years, we've been running budget deficits of hundreds of thousands, if not more than that. We need something different. And the only way to change what's going on in Seven Hills right now, if you're not happy with the status quo, is to elect new people. There's a great team of people running that work well together, have a different vision for Seven Hills, and if the status quo continues, Seven Hills won't change. If you elect new people to city council, you'll get a different city.
Great, thank you. Candidates, any other questions, comments, or thoughts?
Thank you
Mr.
very much
Biasiotta?
for having us.
Anytime.
Appreciate it.
Nope, thanks.
No?
One more time.
Councilman Trafis?
Thank you for having us, and I look forward to the next couple months.
Great. Mr. Tripi, Councilman, anything?
Again, thank you, and I do believe that the only other comment I'll make is that I believe people have to run for the right reason, and that right reason is not to advance themselves or further their own agendas, but to go out there and try to serve the community. And I think the majority of the people that are running for office do that, and especially in a small community like Seven Hills.
Great, thank you. That's all the questions we have for the Seven Hills City Council candidates tonight. Candidates, thank you all very much for joining us. Please check back to cleveland.com to read stories about the debates, the issues, and the candidates for the upcoming election. Early voting starts October 6th.